Hi, welcome to the last section of Chapter 19 of the American Pageant. We're covering the cause of the Civil War. Today we're covering the electoral upheaval of 1860 to Farewell to Union. Nice rosy stuff going on, isn't it? So 1860, you got four candidates running. You have Stephen Douglas, John C. Breckinridge, you have Bell of the Constitutional Union Party, and Abraham Lincoln. John C. Breckinridge is a Southerner. Stephen Douglas is really popular with Northerners. And then you have John Bell from Tennessee, the Can't We All Get Along party. Lincoln won the election in 1860, even though most people did not vote for him. He did not win with the popular vote. 60% of the nation voted against him. Now, it's confusing the way that's worded. He got 40% of the vote, which is the most of the four candidates, but that means 60% of the country didn't vote for Abe Lincoln. 10 southern states didn't even allow his name to be on the ballot. You couldn't even vote for him in North Carolina if you wanted, or Georgia or Alabama. You could write his name in, I guess, but you didn't have the option. Lincoln won a clear majority in the Electoral College, even though he wasn't on the southern ballots. And this was a signal to the South that their rule of the country, because of the Three-Fifths Compromise, was over. 5 of the first 7 presidents were slaveholders. They had balance of power in Congress. They actually dominated Congress until 1850. Once California gets let in, and the free states outnumber the slave states, the Southerners know they're in trouble. And it takes about 10 years to get caught up. And basically what happens is the North, who's more populated, they have 22 million people, outvotes the 9 million people in the South. And so the more populous North outvoted the South, and the South's like, oh, great, here we go. We got this moron as president. He's a part of this conspiracy. These Republicans, they're evil. They're Al-Qaeda. He's got a beard. This is Osama bin Laden. He is the president of the United States now. South Carolina was actually pretty happy about the outcome because now they finally, after all these years, had an excuse to secede from the Union. Thanks, we're out of here. We've been wanting to leave for so long. And even though the Republicans won the presidency, they don't have control of the House, they don't control the Senate, they don't control the Supreme Court. But Lincoln's election signaled the beginning of the end of Southern power. And they knew that this was just the start, that the Republicans in the North were simply going to keep outvoting the South. And so they cashed in their chips and said, we had a good run, America. We're going to go do our own thing now. And so they thought the South thought Lincoln was out to destroy their way of life. The picture, by the way, is one of the first pictures after Lincoln won the election. He got a letter from a girl, a 13-year-old girl, I believe 12 or 13, saying, hey, Mr. President, President-elect, you got a bony face. You should cover it up with a beard. You should grow some whiskers, because men, ladies like men with whiskers. And so after that, Lincoln started growing a little beard, which that's how we know him. Kind of interesting little story. Here's the electoral map. You can see California, Oregon are in there, all the blue there. The Constitutional Union Party, John Bell, won the border states, Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee. John C. Breckinridge won all of the South, including Maryland and Delaware. Those are all slave states. And then, you have Stephen Douglas, who won part of New Jersey, and he won Missouri. Didn't even win his own state. But you can see that only 40% of the vote went to Abe Lincoln. So that means 60% of America did not want Lincoln. So Lincoln, he's elected in November 1860. He doesn't take over until March 4th, 1861. So he's got, you got 5 months to not do anything because you're just trying to get everything lined up. In the meantime, there's the biggest crisis in the history of our country. Lincoln promises the South, I'm not going to touch slavery. I'm not doing anything to your slaves. Believe me, and they're like, we don't trust you, man. We know you're a part of this conspiracy. And so on December 20th, 1860, South Carolina seceded from the Union. They filed for divorce. And so shortly after this, within a few months, the Confederacy, the Confederate States of America, is formed. By February 1861, 7 states had seceded. These 7 states were all members of what we would call the Deep South. You have South Carolina, Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, Georgia, Louisiana, and Texas. They formed the Confederate States of America. Their Constitution is almost a word-for-word copy. Their declaration is very similar, but they explicitly support slavery. They formed the Confederate States of America, or the CSA. Their capital was Montgomery, Alabama. And the first president is former Secretary of War and former Senator Jefferson Davis, pictured here. He's the only American president ever elected to a 6-year term. The only American president to ever have a line item vetoed that wasn't overturned by the Supreme Court. Bill Clinton had it for 2 years in the 90s. They left, and this is the classic, what caused the Civil War? And people say states' rights. It's slavery. Come on, everyone knows it's slavery. Officially, they're leaving for states' rights. But what right to what? To have slaves. That's the states' rights they want, is we want their slaves. They claim legally that they formed the Constitution as a contract. These states, some of them existed before the Constitution, and by entering the contract, there were certain things that needed to be upheld. Protecting their rights, enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act. And because the Constitution, this contract was broken, they legally could flee and leave the Union. And this was the legal basis of their secession. So the Constitution is a contract, the government violated it, so the Constitution was null and void, so they left and formed their own country. There's two schools of thoughts in terms of historiography on what caused the Civil War. You have the contending civilization school, which a lot of writers subscribe to, that basically the North and the South are so different that eventually they're just going to go to war. It doesn't matter what we did. Those two are just too diabolically opposed. They're going to fight because they have totally different ways of life. The other side is the fractured national politics. That the North and the South got along because they could compromise, and that's what our government's based on, our whole checks and balances. And then it just got so bad that, these fractured national politics, they failed to compromise. That's the other school of what the cause of the Civil War is. Both of them, it's slavery that's constant. Slavery, slavery. Slavery's bad. So here's how they voted in the southern states for or against secession. Tennessee, Arkansas, and Virginia. We'll talk about them a little later. Okay, y'all? So, reactions to secession. You still have a president. You still have James Buchanan in power. And he's the guy on the watch. He has legal power. Lincoln has no power. He's not sworn in yet. General Lee, Colonel Lee at the time, said that I can only see a fearful calamity upon us. Like, this isn't good. James Buchanan, here's why he's not a very good president. He said, secession's illegal. You can't do that, but I can't fight you to stop you. It's illegal for me to attack you. I can't go to war to stop you because that's illegal. I just can't break the law. You're breaking the law, but I can't break the law too. Two wrongs don't make a right. He also says, you know what? We should just get along. Let's just go buy Cuba. What? It's like a couple trying to get a divorce and they decide to go buy a new sports car or have a kid or get a puppy to save their marriage. Like, I know you guys are getting along. We're not getting along. Hey, look, we're going to buy Cuba. Are we cool with that? We're going to buy Cuba. No, okay. I'm just going to sit here and look like I'm drunk in this picture until Lincoln takes over. Sorry, Lincoln, it's your mess. He's surrounded by pro-Southern advisors who are giving him bad advice. That's really being nice to James Buchanan. Force was not used. He claims that the army can't be used to stop this because they have to go fight those Native Americans, those Indians out west. They're the real problem. And they're going, really? Because the country's being torn in half. Yeah, I know, but if we don't protect us from the natives, they're going to take over both of them. I don't know. And so Forrest may end the possibility of peaceful settlement as well. He doesn't want to use the army because he's hoping to negotiate, but he's not doing anything to really negotiate. Good job, James Buchanan. Lincoln doesn't take over till March 4th, not March 1st, 1861. That's a typo there. Apologize for that. In his inaugural address, he reached out to the South. He said, "We are not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection." He's really good. So there is some attempts of compromise. You have the Crittenden amendments of the Constitution were designed to appease the South. John Crittenden of Kentucky, a border state, proposed these. They basically restore the Missouri Compromise, not restore the Missouri Compromise. We'll fix that real quickly. Hey, look. You guys should just hit pause for a second. Hey, look at that. We fixed it. Yay. He had a reason to get a compromise because eventually John Crittenden had one son fight for the North and one son fight for the South, and he doesn't want them to fight each other. And can we just all get along, please? To quote Rodney King. The amendments prohibited slavery in territories north of the 3630 line, but permitted slaveries in the territories south of the line. Just ignore California, okay? Future states north and south of this line would get a vote on the issue of slavery. Lincoln rejects the amendments. And really, what options did James Buchanan have? It's tough, but he's still a terrible president. So the southern states seceded, fearing the Republicans would threaten their rights to own slaves. Many Southerners felt that their secession would be unopposed by the North. And many Northerners were happy, like, good, get rid of them. We're getting rid of the diseased part of our country anyway. More power to you. Adios, we don't like you anyway. They assumed that Northern manufacturers and bankers dependent on Southern cotton and markers wouldn't dare cut off the South. That they need us too much. They need our cotton. They need us to buy stuff and all that. They wouldn't dare cut off their money making. No, you're wrong, actually. Good job. You overestimated your cotton there, South. You do it a couple times. And they also claim they voluntarily joined the Union, so now they're voluntarily leaving. And Lincoln, when he takes power, says, no, you're not. We're going to stop you. And so they also paralleled this American Revolution. Their rights were being violated. They were leaving for freedom. They're going to be fighting this very powerful nation. In fact, in many places in the South, they don't call this a Civil War. They call it the Revolution of 1861. So here's our situation. In the blue are loyal states. The dark red are the 7 states that seceded. The light red, we'll get to what happened to them. And those 4 yellow ones are loyal slave states. Kentucky, Missouri, Delaware, and Maryland stay in the North, even though they have slavery. And so this is where people get confused that the Civil War initially wasn't over slavery because there's slave states on both sides. Yeah, technically that's the official reason, but we all know what's really going on. So here's a very famous, the Eagle's Nest in 1861. Kind of shows these traitors, these snakes there. They're trying to ruin our country. And so it's calling for annihilation to the traitors. Here's a little timeline of the cause of the Civil War and some practice questions if you want to test your mettle and see how well you can do. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions or comments, put them in the comment on YouTube and give a like for Pete's sake. Come on, I only have like 10. See ya.